Hi, Dave here, Big Bike Mad. Today we're taking a look at the vexed subject of motorcycle auxiliary lighting. My sort of take on it really is that most cars nowadays have got some form of daytime running lights, and if on a motorcycle you just rely on the headlight and you don't have some form of additional bright LED type lighting, then you're going to be even more invisible than usual because car drivers are going to get used to looking for these bright spots of light. So I always fit auxiliary lights to every single bike, whether it's a sports bike or a tourer or anything. The trouble is, if you go on to Amazon or eBay, there are lots of cheap lights out there, often long delivery times from China, and you just wonder if they're any good. On the other hand, if you look at makes like Denali or a Wunderlich, they're extremely expensive, incredibly expensive. So there's got to be middle ground, something that is really effective and reliable, long-lasting, not too expensive. Well, the ones that I always fit are the Cree LED auxiliary lights from a company called BikeVis. And in terms of specification, these are a 900 lumen light, which is extremely bright, even in bright sunlight. And yet they only use 10 watts of power, so they're not going to drain the battery. The actual lights are less than 40 millimeters in diameter, so they're not too big, and they are completely waterproof. And I know that Dan, who runs BikeVis, been doing this for years, and this is, I think, his version 3. They've got steadily better and better, but I know that even the early ones were tested by putting them in a bucket of water for a month, and nothing went wrong with them. They carried on shining the whole time. So unlike some of the cheap knockoffs you might get from China, these really are going to be reliable. In terms of fitting, the instructions that come with them are fairly basic. I'd say if you don't know what you're doing with motorcycle electrics, buy the lights. They're quite cheap, and get a mechanic or an electrician to, someone who works on bike electrics, to fit them. I've got a couple of installation videos. There's one on F700GS that I did, which shows these lights and how I wire them. I usually wire them through a fuse block from Nippy Norman, which means that I can easily get at the fuse, and it simplifies the wiring a little bit. But they are pretty simple. You can have them either with or without a switch, and the switches are pretty easy to come by. It can be tricky. There are some generic brackets available. One of the easiest things is that a lot of these brackets you can get fixed onto bars of some kind. So if you have some kind of crash bar on your motorcycle, very easy to fit on adventure bikes, for instance, you can do that. You can make a bracket if you've got the means of doing that, and you can buy some generic brackets. One of the advantages of going for an expensive kit like Denali, for instance, is that they do actually come with obviously a model specific bracket. Now, in terms of this bike, it's a K1300GT. Just ignore the fact that the fairing is removed at the moment for various works. This particular bracket is obviously a bespoke bracket. And the story behind that is that I bought a set of lights from Wunderlich, which were their micro saluter lights, and they're the pre-LED versions, and I think it's one of the last ones they had, and I bought that from them, and it comes with a really nice wiring loom that is absolutely designed for the bike. The brackets are designed for the bike, everything fits. You get an on-off switch, relay, the whole thing, and I fitted that very, very easily. Very good instructions from Wunderlich. Fitted it all up, to only find that half the parts were missing for the actual lamps. And when I complained to them, they wanted €200 to send me a completely new kit, and they wouldn't give me a refund on the old one, which I think is absolutely appalling customer service. So I said no thank you. I kept the brackets which I would have struggled to make myself because they're quite complicated, and the wiring harness which was already fitted, and then I simply bought these BikeVis Cree lamps. So the first thing I've got to do with this BikeVis kit is to cut the wire to a short length like that. This is the Deutsche connector that actually goes on the inside of the bike onto the bike's wiring, and this is the connector on the lamp. So I cut this wire, and then I'm going to feed over a length of quite wide, I think it's about 8 or 9mm wide heat shrink, and then I'm going to put on 2 smaller pieces of heat shrink, one over each wire, and the purpose of that is so that I can insulate the 2 wires from themselves, but then also give them an outer waterproof coating. So we just pop that on like that, and then when that's on there, we'll take this over to the bike and we'll solder this onto the wires from the loom that we've got from Wunderlich, which is, in the case of a bike without that kit, this would be the wires that go to the relay and to the fuse block and whatever it is, however you're connecting it into your bike. And then first of all I just braid the 2 wires that need to be connected together. These are the live wires. Obviously the battery is disconnected at this stage, so I just braid those 2 together. Now, I'm not an expert at this, I'm just an ordinary guy trying to save a bit of money, so don't take this as the ideal tutorial, but this is how I'm going to do it. So I take a good quality soldering iron, and I just heat up a little bit of solder on the tip there, and I just very gently rub it along the part where the wires are. There we are. And when the solder has cooled, we just take the small bit of heat shrink, move it so it covers the joint completely, and then we take a heat gun, and the important thing is not to apply too much heat too quickly, but to gently fan it along the length like that, and you'll see it shrinks to a nice tight fitting around the wire. Then we're going to do the other wire exactly the same, and then we simply pop the bolt from the lamp's bracket up in there and just do it up, and then having bolted it nice and securely on, this will obviously be more secure when it's all fixed down and the fairings back on. We then just join the 2 halves of the Deutsche connector like that, and they go in. There we are, that's it, that's a very slight click in there, and that's a really good quality joint. But I think, you know, when it's done, I'll show you a view in a moment from the front with both of them fitted, but I think when it's done, you know, it's actually quite neat, and it's certainly going to be effective. It's quite wide, they're put at a position on the bike which is going to make the bike look bigger to other road users, and they're about the right height. You could put them from the mirrors, but that's about 30 centimeters, 25-30 centimeters higher up, and that's getting a little bit high. I don't want to dazzle anybody. In terms of once you fit them, obviously it is important to adjust them so that they don't dazzle other road users, and I have them say that I just use a mark on my garage door, and this features in our F700GS video for fitting these lights, and I simply look at where the low beam is, draw a line there, and then I have these auxiliary lights very, very slightly below the low beam sort of level, and I don't seem to get flashed by anybody, so I seem to think that probably works. And here's what they look like once they've been fitted.